The first thing he saw was the bright red sign above the college. He was immediately horrified to find himself reborn before the college entrance exams. This was in Chen High School in the Xia Kingdom. The third-year students of the 7th grade were studying there. The boy grabbed his head and screamed indignantly at the horror he had been thrown into. He did not understand why, if he was destined to be reborn, it did not happen after entering college. Since ancient times, people on the blue planet suffered from a catastrophe in the form of an invasion of secret kingdoms. The secret kingdom united with another world inhabited by terrible monsters. At times, they used rifts to invade the world of people. Powerful monsters capable of destroying entire nations have become a threat to all of humanity. To fight back, humanity has developed a system of monster genes, by entering which you can awaken a monster in yourself and unlock natural talents. Only such wars could save humanity. Because of this, they received a higher status and honor unattainable for ordinary people. The blue planet entered an era where fighting power became everything. Everything else was secondary, and power became above all. The young man sat at his desk, his head propped up in his hand. Yi was very upset that he had become a high school student. One of his classmates remarked that he had another nightmare and called him trash. Another student laughed and wondered out loud why this loser wanted to take college exams. One of the girls, who was obviously popular, asked Yi why he didn't quit school and go home and become a worker, working until he died. In every story, the main character was always poisoned by the main witch, and he thought of this girl as such. Yi immediately realized that the original owner probably didn't have the best reputation in the class. His parents had an accident in his second year, which caused him to stop studying and training. His good grades dropped and he became a burden in the class. The whole class immediately noticed that Yi was lost in thought and teased him for it. The young man tried to understand to himself why the first owner of this body did not study and now he had to suffer. The teacher came into the class and asked for attention. He asked if everyone was ready and noted that they would soon begin administering the serum for genetic modification and they should be confident in themselves. Their 3 years of strengthening their bodies and training in combat energy were only for this day. The teacher adjusted his glasses on his nose, looked around the entire class, and reminded them of those who were constantly suffering from nonsense. He hoped that the teacher's words were a joke, and also hoped that this student was not him, and was not worried for now. Well, he thought that since he got into this guy's body, he would bring order to his life. Soon, all the students were taken to the gene injection hall. You yourself were noisy, because everyone was discussing the upcoming event and trying to predict who they would be lucky enough to wake up as. In the center of the hall stood a device that actually created the serum necessary for all students. It was a serum for awakening genes, and it contained the primary genes of all magical monsters ever recorded by human warriors. After the injection, one gene was randomly awakened. Usually, the stronger the person was physically, the stronger the awakened gene was. The teacher asked everyone not to be nervous and noted that those whose names are called to us should be suitable for receiving the serum. He called out names. The student would come up and they would immediately give him this injection. And he, looking around, noted that everyone who had received the injection began to behave very strangely and decided that it would probably not be easy. When they called his name and he came up to receive the injection, he decided that he could handle anything. As soon as the serum entered his body, he felt some strange sensation. The teacher looked at him, chuckled, and said that apparently nothing had changed. And Hai, still in some kind of shock, said that perhaps the serum was somehow wrong. The same girl that Yi thought was the main witch suddenly appeared next to him and began laughing and telling others that Yi had not awakened at all. It was a real shame. She came up to him and poked him with her finger and in the nose and said that the unawakened warrior was like a bird without wings, and the guy was simply doomed. She said that it was his style and suggested that he finally go home and die alone. The girl irritated him madly. Well, when she touched him again, he felt that the strange sensations in his body intensified many times over. Yi received the gene of the infinite monster. The girl continued to laugh with him and asked him not to pretend that he had awakened, but Yi literally hissed at her and told her to get out. The girl did not expect such impudence and wanted to be indignant, but Yi angrily told everyone that if they did not leave, it would be too late. Then his awakening took place, which everyone saw. The girl was thrown back into the hall to the rest of the students by a powerful energy wave. Everyone noticed that Yi's aura was incredibly powerful and no one could handle it. It amazed everyone who was present at that moment. But one of the guys reacted to this in his own way. He didn't like the feeling that someone stronger than him had appeared. Yi-He received the A-rank gene. It was a crazy flame of Demol. The bloodline abilities were in the form of scorching breath of molten pulse and spore absorption, and he realized that he had apparently hit the jackpot in that system. Those who thought he was a loser couldn't believe their eyes when he used his aura to scatter everyone nearby. Even Wang Sik, who is a nasty girl, was unconscious even though she awakened a second-level A-rank magical monster, a scorpion with fire bones. No one understood what kind of gene he awakened, and he came to his senses, and having cleared his throat, apologized for making a whole scene with waking up, and explained that he asked everyone to move away, but no one listened to him. Suddenly, from the speaker hanging on the wall of the hall, they said that all awakened students of the 3rd year had to go to me in the testing building to check the gene-awakened monster and the level of their martial arts. The device for detecting awakened genes can check the gene of a magical monster and its martial arts level. Li Sin Bang of Yi-He's class awakened the bloodline of the 3rd-level magical beast, the swift vertebrate bug. It seemed like he was lucky, because before awakening, he was average in the class, and now he became number 1. Chu Zhou actually deserved the title of the top student in the class. Not only did he have a 9th-level martial arts, he also awakened the highest-level 3rd Ice Demon Dragon bloodline. All of this was unfair. Many were amazed by the one that Mrs. Liu was seeing off, who was also a 9th-level martial artist. She had a rare bloodline of a 4th-level Netherworld Sparrow, and if a monster of that level appeared in its true form, it could destroy the city. Yi-He thought about it and noted that the genes of awakened monsters were classified as level 3 or level 4, but his was an A rank with no special markings. At that moment, the next name was called Yi-He. When he appeared before the whole hall, everyone began to admire him, although before that it had always been different. This world really revolved around power. Yi-He walked up to the podium and walked towards the capsule where his gene would be identified. Everyone started buzzing again, guessing what kind of lineage he might have, considering that he had a strong aura pressure after awakening. A guy who felt the high competition and noted the name Yi-He for himself. When Yi-He entered the capsule, information about him was broadcast on a large screen for the entire hall. Well, surprisingly for everyone, only basic information was available, and the rest of the data was not shown. The lineage of his monster was unknown, which shocked absolutely everyone. Someone started laughing that Yi-He was only level 3 in martial arts, and even his younger brother from middle school could beat him. The former admiration disappeared, and everyone began to joke that apparently he had no pedigree at all. Yi-He was incredibly upset. Everything was as he thought. The gene he inherited could not be identified, but a hint of the infinite monster's origin appeared. His gene level was different from others. It brought a smile to his face. This meant that as long as he completed the quests, he could increase the infinite monster gene. This made him a true king of monsters. After that day at school, he realized that a lot was in his hands and he could reach great heights. The teacher was surprised that he wanted to switch to homeschooling and return only later for the college entrance exam, and noted that he doubted that the guy would really study at home. Yi-He assured that he really wanted it. He said that he knew that he was too far behind. So now he had to go through special training, and if he went the same way as everyone else, he wouldn't have a chance. The teacher asked him if he knew that if you wanted to become a warrior, the only way was to go to college. The teacher noted that the boy had awakened his bloodline, but his foundation was too weak and he would never pass the entrance exam. He advised the boy to prepare to stay for a 2nd year and try again next year and not to rush. Yi-He emphasized that the teacher probably did not realize that a powerful bloodline had been awakened in him, and he now had a certain chance to succeed. The teacher gave in, though, and warned that the boy would still return to him to retake the program next year. After this conversation, Yi-He went home. He was very thoughtful. His parents' house was mortgaged for 600 million from the accident compensation of more than $1 million. And now he had a decent starting capital. It could be increased in combat skill or increased in interaction with the Diola gene. According to the infinite monster gene, each gene awakened with 1% compatibility. Well, Demola definitely had 3%, and he couldn't figure out where the other 2 came from. This was only one answer. The Demola gene could absorb the power of the genetic awakening serum and gain another 2% compatibility. This proved that the gene-related serums in this world could enhance the gene's abilities. He thought that instead of working himself to death as a warrior, it was worth spending money on increasing his genetic compatibility, and that suited him better. He decided to hurry up and buy a genetic-enhancing serum. He walked up to the turnstile and swiped his student ID card through the scanning window to receive his pass. But when Yi-hee raised his eyes, he even became scared. Everyone around him had awakened bloodlines. He saw their auras. After awakening the crazy flame of Demol, he received a unique sensory ability in the form of a magnetic field of life. Diola could sense the life signals the creatures were giving off by releasing their magnetic field. Yi-hee could clearly feel the warrior's chi and blood burning in them like a brazier along with the beast roars from the bloodlines, and Hai could no longer suppress his desire to fight. After all, the crazy diamond was the king of beasts in their world, destined to conquer all life on this planet. He regretted that he was a newbie and could only restrain the bloodline of the Demola for now. His thoughts were interrupted by someone putting a hand on his shoulder from behind and calling out. Behind him, he saw a girl who, taking off her glasses, noted that he shouldn't have been staring at the others so much. He began to apologize, but the girl said that everything was fine. She suggested that most likely he had only recently awakened his monster agent and was unable to control his powers. She asked what brought him to the warrior center. The girl was surprised that he wanted to buy gene drugs. It was only at the initial stage, since they were a very expensive thing and could easily cause resistance, becoming less effective after some time. She explained that in order to get the maximum effect from a war, they usually waited until their bloodline reached a dead end before using them, and advised that at his level, he could only use a hard-type beginner potion that cost around 400,000. Yi-hee almost choked when he heard such a high price, realizing that he couldn't afford to buy 5, even if he spent all his savings, and decided to ask if the girl could tell him who could give him a discount. The girl offered to take Yi-hee's business card and explained that on the recommendation of a veteran warrior, he was able to get some kind of discount. Yi-hee thanked the girl with a wide smile and immediately went to look for the necessary goods. Huang He-li waved her hand at him and said that if fate brought them together, they would see each other again. Next, Yi-hee had a long tour of various stores to search for and buy the things he needed. He had to leave a lot of money in each of the shops he visited. The knives and daggers cost much more than he expected. This day brought about wild spending by Yi-hee. He managed to get home only after dusk. As soon as he got home, he immediately set about improving his bloodline. He increased his compatibility from the initial 3% to a whopping 7%. With each sip of the gene drug, his physical form improved, but in the end, he became only slightly stronger. It seemed that the stronger his body became, the more difficult it would be to cause further basic mutation. Well, he thought that it was not bad at all, because in just a few minutes, he achieved what others had worked for 3 years, and this was only the use of his basic characteristics and not the power of the Demola pedigree. After that, he decided to go to the secret dimension. The rifts of the secret dimension were ranked from C to E, and the higher the rank, the stronger the beasts inside. The S-class dimension beasts were completely beyond human control. If I had never invaded the real world, it would have been an apocalypse-level disaster. When he got to the dimension, Hu was surprised because there were far fewer people there than expected. It could be that the secret dimension had been developed for too long and had become old, and the treasures had already been taken out. He was met by an administrator. He accepted the previously booked ticket to secret dimension number 3. He asked him to sign a warning about the possibility of a fatal outcome and issued a ticket. He passed through the checkpoint and found himself near the entrance to the rift of the secret dimension. He was delighted by the spectacle and was looking forward to the beginning of his ascent to become the king of the beasts. He immediately jumped straight into the rift, saying that they were already waiting for him there. He had to go through some kind of barrier to find himself in another dimension. He landed on the green grass. His journey had begun. The stars, Cardan, Anvei, and the Taijin star were visible around. Although he had seen what secret dimensions looked like in textbooks, what he saw with his own eyes could not be compared to any textbook. He was glad that he could even see the starry sky, but he did not immediately hear that a monster was watching him from the forest behind him. It was a first-rank saber-toothed rabbit beast that immediately pounced on Yi-hee, waiting for him to do so when he was least expecting it. This rabbit had a huge, toothy mouth. With its unusual fangs for rabbits, it could easily bite Yi-hee to pieces. Just before the rabbit could grab onto him, Yi-hee jumped to the side, laughing. The monster actually thought that the aura couldn't be sensed. It was the ability of the Yi Qi gene called the magnetic field of life, through which he sensed other beings nearby. While still in flight, Yi He struck the rabbit with his weapon, killing it in a second. The saber-toothed rabbit's magic core was white and of average quality, costing around 1,000 yen. He earned this money within a minute of entering and found it very effective, compared to an ordinary person who, working hard all month, received 3 or 4,000. Well, he decided that collecting too many first-rank beast cores was pointless, and it was better to find at least second-rank beasts. Before he could finish his thought, he collided with a second-rank beast. It was a demonic corpse eater, a huge worm that burst out of the ground. This only made Yi He happy, and he reached for his dagger. Every encounter with monsters in Chen's secret dimension only made Yi He's mood rise even more. Despite the monster's enormous size, Yi He was not at all afraid. Yi He read the monster encyclopedia. Compared to the steel-like shell on the back of the demonic corpse eater, it was much easier to penetrate the soft armor on the stomach. All he had to do was wait for the right moment and use the dagger successfully. But he also did not forget about martial arts, although he was not so strong in them due to the loss of a lot of time while training. But his strength was enough to resist this kind of monsters, and he managed to push this huge worm away from himself. Well, very suddenly for Yi He himself, the mouth of this monster opened and something like discs began to fly out of it. And he had absolutely no idea that this monster could release such projectiles and was very surprised. He didn't manage to dodge one of these projectiles and received some good damage, but this only made him angry, and he began to swear that his clothes were worth too much to be torn like that. But at his current level of martial arts, he couldn't do anything against such a bug. And without the support of powerful martial techniques, even with the profound energy of Dan Tian and the life force of blood, he could barely use 50% of his strength. This was all because the original body was a complete fool in studies and now had to look for loopholes. He had to summon a crazy Demola, the bloodline of the Emperor Demon. Yi He's capabilities were immediately expanded by a significant amount. He was now much stronger. The worm opened its triple-jawed mouth again. This monster wanted to pounce on Yi He, but he got ahead of the monster and rushed at him first. And he literally walked through this worm, jumped right into its mouth, and tore it apart from the inside. With his powerful overall physique stats soaring to 21 points, he completely destroyed the second-level demonic corpse eater. Even after deactivating his transformation, he still had to release excess heat, which made him feel like a jet engine. The short sword he had just bought was rusted by the poison of the demonic corpse eater. The weapon that cost 250,000 could not withstand even a second-level monster. Yi Shi was indignant at this scam from the merchant. Yi He wondered if the energy consumption from his first monster hunt was that high. He was very hungry and expending so much energy, but he remembered that he did not bring any food with him. Just thinking about his voice, he felt a very appetizing smell that made his mouth water. He realized that this alluring aroma came from the demonic corpse eater's magical core, which was green. He didn't hesitate for long and decided to swallow this core, thinking that he didn't care at all about the possible consequences, and the hunger was much stronger. He swallowed the core carefully. Thanks to this demonic corpse eater core, his compatibility increased by another 0.3%. He felt it. His feelings changed for a moment. He was very surprised that this happened at all, because he spent hundreds of thousands on a gene potion, and it only increased his compatibility by 1%. And now, a single green magic core increased it by 0.3%. He thought that back then, the white core of the saber-toothed rabbit should have increased his compatibility by at least 1%. And he was very upset that he spent so much money on something that he could have gotten completely free. And he gathered his courage and decided to turn his disappointment into motivation and go hunting in the evening for as long as his soul desired. After this, he activated the magnetic field of life in search of other beings. The next day, his compatibility was already almost 16%. After reaching 9% compatibility, further absorption of white magic cores no longer increased it, but it was now possible to make money on it. When Yi He dumped all the kernels in front of the buyer, she was very surprised that an ordinary high school student managed to get only a few. According to government regulations, the warlords were required to hand over 1/10 of their spoils, and for one green core, he had to give 5 white ones. Yi He continued in the same vein. In the end, he only had 9 days left until the college entrance exam. He was in the secret dimension of Class D. There was a whole group of warriors in this dimension, and they were trying to figure out if they could deal with the bloody jade flower, the exact location of which they had found on the last expedition. Who was the expedition old man Chen was before, and was unable to join this time? The team now had only 5 people, and according to the rules, at least 6 were required to enter the secret dimensions of the D class. One of them, named Lin He, noted that he contacted the agency to be introduced to a new warrior. They promised him a man of the 9th level of Dazla. This new warrior was Yi He. Since he was still a high school student and was not allowed to enter the secret dimensions of Class D, he had to use an underground agency to create a fake identity and join the team. It cost 100,000 yuan. The name Dudsel seemed very strange to this group, and he explained that he had no other choice. If he used the real one, it would violate copyright. They could have told him to forget about it, because with his 9th level rookie war power, he really wasn't suitable for the D-class secret dimension, and their team only allowed him to observe and learn, but not interfere. He didn't like this explanation of duties before the mission, although he still thought it was right. It was better than setting him up in the middle of the mission. With this, they set off for the bloody jade flower. The tracker showed that the bloody jade flower was in the oasis ahead of them. It was guarded by second-class monsters of the general-level bloodline. One of the warriors in the group remembered that last time there was a tropical forest. Now a desert opened up before them, and it looked like the secret dimensions were connected to more than one world. Soon after, they were followed by demonic earth rats. They were noticed by the one who was assigned to watch what was happening around. Having transmitted this information by radio, he received the command to deal with these rats. Vaughn launched several black daggers at the rats at once. Each of the daggers hit its target, and the pursuit of the car ended as quickly as it began. It was a very fast and precise strike that was definitely worth learning. When pouring combat energy into the throwing knife, it exploded like a bomb upon impact. This guy was ruthless and laconic, as it seemed to Yi He. Well, it was not surprising, because these were warriors with great experience and enormous power, so they could be in such dimensions. They left the car and continued walking through the desert, and he was surprised why they were walking, since the oasis was quite far away, to which he received the answer that the monsters in the oasis were highly sensitive, and the sound of a running engine would definitely alert them. It was then decided to distribute the tasks. Xiao Xiao was to throw a flashbang grenade later to lure the beast out, and Xiao Wu and Hood were to set traps. Liu was ordered to control suppressive fire, while the commander himself was to take charge of the front line. And he was warned that he should only watch what was happening and not interfere in any way, to which he agreed. Xiao Xiao released a light suppression grenade to lure the beast out. The flashbang grenade contained the pheromones of a high-level monster, which attracted the beasts because they thought their territory was being invaded. A second-level Earth Dragon beast came out to meet the entire group. Yi He was warned again and asked to be careful. Little did Yi He's group know that it wasn't just a dimensional monster that awaited them. The man reached for one of his daggers. He licked the blade of his knife with a laugh, one of his eyes hidden behind the cloudy lenses of his glasses, the other glowing with madness. Soon the Earth Dragon was defeated. It seemed that silence had returned to this desert. The dragon lost its head. The team had encountered similar monsters many times, and it seemed easy to them. They immediately informed their Captain Lin that the Earth Dragon was dead, and everyone ran to him. Captain Lin suggested continuing to move forward, but suddenly hesitated. One of his warriors shouted warning of danger. The captain turned around and saw a huge dragon paw above him. He didn't wait for a special invitation and immediately jumped up from his seat, rushing to the captain's comparison. He was very fast. He was seething with power. He was overflowing with energy. Taking a running start, he jumped on the dragon. And he delivered a very powerful blow and put an end to the life of this monster. The warriors were defeated. Yi He was just a newbie in the eyes. Yet he had the strength to knock down a second-rank beast with such a powerful blow. Xiao Xiao was amazed that Yi He's mountain-crushing heavy fist had knocked out the dragon. The entire team thanked him for his brave act. This time, the Earth Dragon was truly defeated, and I think there was proof. This time, they also collected the Earth Dragon's soul essence, and it was a great catch. It looked like a big fruit, but it could greatly improve the gene. Captain Lin noted that this time they were on the verge of death, but apparently they managed to defeat the dragon and find the bloody jade flower. But the captain interrupted again. A voice was heard behind him, and the captain felt a very sharp pain in his left side. Someone behind him said that he shouldn't have thought about the jade flower. All the warriors were horrified. No one could understand where these people came from, how they could now help their captain. Captain Ilian stepped aside and asked Hood, who had wounded him, what he had done. A thug emerged from the cloud who only laughed at the captain and explained that his fighter I had done something that would make him rich. This big guy was Huo Peng. The whole team recognized him immediately because his appearance was quite memorable. He stole from the warrior the loot they found in the dimensions, and now he has his eye on the team that included Yi He. Captain Lin warned that Huo Peng's blade was poisoned and asked the big guy how he knew about this place, because even his teammate only knew the location of the bloody jade flower after entering the dimension. Yi He immediately guessed that he had sealed the information into the dart. Hood smiled greedily and noted that Yi He was quite smart and asked why he didn't go back to school since the college entrance exams were coming up, and instead he was playing with death. And he pretended that he was really thinking about the fact that the exams were close and the title of the best awaited him, and spoke about it out loud. Hood was stuck in attacking and called him an upstart. And he was already very angry and noted that Hood was a worldly, impudent scum yapping in front of him and that he was actually the upstart. And he was already ready to attack and, noting how noisy it was around, declared that it was time to get rid of all the trash. Huo Peng laughed and noted that Yi He was a wonderful guy and he would like to have his head. Hood immediately accepted this command and began to attack Yi He. But no one could have guessed what kind of power this newbie, an ordinary school student preparing for college exams, actually possessed. But suddenly the Hood disappeared right in front of him. This was a bad sign. He was very agile and appeared as if from nowhere from above. Yi He saw this as the perfect chance to try out his new skill and wasn't the least bit scared. Any such skirmishes were only a joy for him, a way to train well. Captain Lin was shocked when he saw what the newcomer had done. Yi He managed to take the ill with just one blow, and now everyone doubted that there really was a newcomer here. It seemed like it was really nothing to him. He dealt with it in just a second. Huo Peng, seeing what had happened to his partner, jumped up in surprise, noted that he had military equipment and asked what great family the guy came from. And he chuckled and replied that it was from the Demol horde and asked if Huo Peng planned to beg for mercy. The brute didn't like this tone. He started cursing and noted that even with Skin and Yi He's technique, he couldn't close this huge gap in combat skills. His monster was a huge bear. He was very much in keeping with his beast, just as terrible and huge. Huo Peng rushed to attack Yi He. He was incredibly angry and found that he could crush the guy with just one finger. But Yi He just laughed at this and joked that they should have started with the paws first, and then Huo Peng squealed from the pain in his leg. But this did not make him stop or retreat, and he continued to approach the young man. Having gained enough of a running start, Huo Peng jumped up, hoping that he could handle the guy in a jump. The second-tier warriors were really something. Yi He's scorching breath wouldn't even be able to straighten his ankle bone. As one might expect, Huo Peng relied on his strength and, jumping, tried to crush the guy with his huge paws. But by that time, Yi He was already in another place, only laughingly asking if Huo Peng had finished his performance and noted that it was now his turn. Thanks to his fist of destruction, Yi He could do incredible things. He charged at the brute, and to everyone's surprise, it only took one blow to calm him down. Huo Peng was beaten and trampled into the ground. He did not move and did not seem to show any signs of life. For Captain Lin's group, this was something incredible. Huo Peng finally came to his senses and noted that the guy had a genetic technique that released toxic gas, and it was disgusting. He said that such a weak warrior like him would definitely be punished and cursed Yi He. And he said that the number of people cursing him was growing and growing, and unable to contain his irritation, he asked who this big guy was. It took place in the central sports stadium of the city of An. All the students were greeted, and the beginning of the annual entrance ceremony of the School of General Higher Martial Arts was announced. The entrance exam to the school was conducted on a competitive basis. Candidates performed in pairs, and the winners went to the next round. The exam lasted 3 days, the first 2 of which were selection competitions, and the final exam took place on the 3rd day. Each student participated in 3 matches during the selection, and those who successfully passed them fought until the best participant in the entrance exam of the year was chosen. All were potential fighters and carried the future of humanity on their keys. They were asked to show their true potential for themselves and for all of humanity, and the official start of the entrance exam was announced. In each of the arenas, there was actually a pair that competed with each other. The students immediately began to carry out their task and began to attack each other. But in Arena 6, there was only one girl, since one candidate had not yet arrived. Although the administration checked and the participants of the 6th arena were Wang Sik and Yi He from In-City Middle School, I was the only girl left. According to the rules, if Yi He does not appear, he will be counted as a loser. The girl knew that being made a fool of at the genetic conference would be the greatest shame in her life, and she thought that she could use her salamander to humiliate Yi He this time. She wasn't the only one who was outraged. The audience also considered him a coward. He didn't even bother to show up for the entrance exam, and should have been sitting at home shaking in his bed with fear. Soon the coach blew the whistle, noted that time was up, and wanted to say that he was not recognized as a loser. But suddenly, everyone's attention was drawn to something in the sky. Many noticed that some huge aura was approaching them. Soon they were able to see that there was indeed a person in the sky, which surprised everyone. What was most shocking was what kind of power it was that allowed this man to fly through the sky. Right in front of Wang Sik, this man landed. She was deafened and blinded by the energy wave that emanated from him. The girl tried to see what the hell was going on around her. Well, before she had time to see who landed in front of her, she saw a huge fist in front of her. It was Yi He who immediately attacked the girl and dealt her a powerful blow. Umbro pushed his rival as far away as possible. He exhaled, calming down that if he were a little late, he would have to return next year. The girl was unable to get up after such a blow and remained lying there, losing her consciousness. And he was immediately recognized as the winner, and the whole crowd that had just recently laughed at him began to shout how strong he was and admire his skill. Captain Lin gave him a bloody jade flower as a token of gratitude. It took him some time to improve his physical abilities. Now, with 20% compatibility, he could relax and enjoy what was to come. He and Long Tao emerged victorious, which meant that they now had to stand in the arena against each other. The coach announced that Long Tao from In-City No. 4 Middle School was against Yi He from In-City No. 1 Middle School and quickly declared the latter the winner. Yi He's opponent again didn't even have time to do anything before he was immediately knocked out. He was literally smeared on the ground and he couldn't even mumble anything in response. The crowd burst into tears again with admiration and began to congratulate such a strong winner who ended each battle with the first blow and never delayed it. Yi He from In-City No. 1 Middle School won all 3 matches and advanced to the final round. After that, only his name was heard throughout the territory. Everyone wanted to get to know him as closely as possible, touch him, and offer their services. He was invited to enter many universities, and they did not give him a break. I wish to wait for the answer of this young man, not to convince him to enter them. Someone from the crowd asked him about his favorite university. This question interested him and made him think. He cleared his throat and asked everyone for forgiveness and declared that he wanted to enroll in Huadu University. This immediately upset many directors, and they began to say that the young man had become arrogant after reaching the finals and would still come to them for help when he was rejected. But Huadu University was the best martial arts university in the Xia Kingdom. It was considered one of the top 5 universities in the world. In a second-rate city like his, only a select few were able to set foot on this holy ground, and now he was one of them. When the university directors left, 2 men in formal suits approached him and, showing some kind of business card, asked he to cooperate with them, since they were going to redefine his level of martial arts. But when they saw that the guy already had the 9th level of martial arts, they were very surprised because only a month ago, he had only had the 3rd. For verification, it was discovered that he often went to the secret dimension of the E-class after he left school. He was asked why he did it, and he answered that he wanted to find himself and said that before his death, his father made him leave a message which stated that if he wanted to overtake humanity, he had to surpass human strength. He explained that this is why he went to the secret dimension to fight, and in one such battle he fell through his own genetic barrier. The men's eyes popped out of their heads at these words, and then they jumped up from their seats shouting that it was impossible. They should have reported it to someone, and he himself did not understand how he became an object of observation. After this whole event, all the news feeds were filled with congratulations from relatives of other candidates. They were all supported and told the warmest words imaginable. They were promised big gifts and all kinds of support. People were rooting for them and worried about them. There were even live broadcasts of interviews with the candidates' parents and friends. But Yi He had no one to support him. He was truly an orphan and no one cared about him. But he was wrong. A man he couldn't even imagine was really rooting for him and believed that he could do anything. Soon it was night from the first round match to the promotion. Yi He inserted his high school number 1. Luo Shuang represented and city number 3 middle school. He was a level 8 warrior who had awakened a rare level 2 magical beast. His parents were both warriors, and many believed that his opponent was finished. And he thought for a moment before the start of their fight and suggested that his opponent strike first. Luo Shuang was very self-confident, and when he heard this addressed to him, he hissed and asked if Yi He knew who he was. Yi He replied that regardless of knowledge and the outcome of the duel, it would not change. Luo Shuang confirmed this with a loud laugh and emphasized that the outcome was that the win was his. And he wished him luck, warning that without it, he would definitely have to die. Luo Shuang immediately attacked the guy, rushing at him with some special greed. But Yi He dodged his blow without straining at all. Luo Shuang noted that he had good momentum, but it was a long way from home to this bald old man. But suddenly Luo Shuang screamed, complaining of pain in his arm, and he grabbed his hand tightly and jumped up with him. The next moment, when the boys landed, Luo Shuang had already been defeated in this fight. Yi He smiled and wondered if there really were no worthy opponents. He emerged victorious again. It was another instant defeat, and this time it was the representative of the qualifying round, Luo Shuang, who was defeated. Many were embarrassed by him because he looked so strong but for some reason immediately ended up on the ground. It was said of Yi He that he was calm as a cloud, even as the wind, and this was the sign of a true master. His skills were judged on a completely different level than those of other candidates, and the gap was simply enormous. The crowd ran with delight again and praised Yi He's strength. People believed that he could definitely reach the final. Medical workers immediately came running for Luo Shuang and took him out of the arena on a stretcher. One of the participants watched this. The candidate expected exactly that from the man she had her eye on. He believed he would be able to defeat Yi He in the finals. Meanwhile, in the live broadcast room of the university's admissions office, a man was shouting and pointing his finger at the screen, ordering his employees to find all the information about the young man. In the second group, in the second arena, the qualifying competition was in full swing. It was a real battle between wonder beauties. Kai Shaoling was known as the number 2 queen of Anchen High School. Liu Qingchu was the unattainable number 1 flower of Anchen High School. The referee blew his whistle, announcing the start of the fight. Kai Shaolin was the first to attack her opponent, noting that she wanted to see how well she could control herself when she was pinned to the ground. The beaten girls were even more interesting to watch. They were very good at martial arts and also incredibly beautiful. Liu Qingchu was thrown back into the arena by a powerful blow from his opponent, but she quickly jumped up and counterattacked Kai Shaoling. All the spectators couldn't take their eyes off the girls, but they didn't argue among themselves and throw barbed jokes at each other. Much to her own surprise, Kai Shaoling fell into her rival's trap. Her hand was stuck in the vortex air currents created by her opponent, and she could not free herself. It wasn't hard to guess what this meant. Kai Shaoling had already given in to all her worries. She was weak. One of the judges shouted that it was Xuan Huang's martial skill. It was a college entrance candidate who possessed the technique. With such a level of combat talent, she didn't even need exams to prove herself and could directly enter Huadu University. This girl actually awakened the third-level royal bloodline Shadowclaw Tiger King. Royal bloodlines were notoriously difficult to control, let alone the ferocious Shadow Tiger. And this girl's future was limitless. Kai Shaoling asked her rival to show her phoenix bloodline. Liu Qingchu calmly replied that she would demonstrate it now. Kai Shaoling laughed at her for thinking that someone below the level of a martial artist could challenge her. The girls really had a fierce battle. They were very competitive with each other, and it showed in the arena. Blow followed blow, but neither girl gave in to her opponent, and the battle continued. The girls were really very strong, and it was incredibly interesting to watch such a fight because it was difficult to even guess who could win. They were completely focused on each other and tried to catch the moment when the opponent would not be expecting it. Their fighting energies collided with great force. All the spectators held their breath. The powerful blow filled the arena with a cloud of dust. Now the intrigue has won the viewers even more. No one even whispered to each other. Absolutely everyone was watching arena with fascination and waiting for the results. Soon, Kai Shaoling emerged from the cloud of dust. The referee noted that she was the only one still standing on the field, but suddenly the girl rolled her eyes deeply and turned pale. The next moment, Kai Shaoling collapsed in exhaustion, while Liu Qingchu was still standing in the arena. With only martial techniques, she completely eliminated the opponent in the 9th place among the disciples and awakened the royal bloodline within herself. She was truly worthy of being called a genius that was born once in a century. The judge declared her the winner. Many predicted that it could become the best attacking city, and no one could argue with that. The next participant in the draw was announced to be Yi He and high school number 1 An Chen. He pulled out a ball from the vase. The ball had written on it and indicated Group A. A tall, muscular guy approached him and noted that he was also in this group, noted that they finally met face to face. He introduced himself as Shen Guan from Qingfeng Private School. Shen Guan noted that they would be second and suggested watching the first battle for now. The first duel was between Luo Shi and Chu Zhou. Luo Shi was strong. He had stayed for a second year specially to study for Huadu University, and his control over awakening the bloodline was really honed. But against this Chu Zhou, he didn't stand a chance. Yi He was surprised that Chu Zhou was from his own school. Shen Guan laughed at me asking to speak that the guy really didn't know. Almost immediately after the match began, Chu Zhou was declared the winner. The principal of Qingfeng Private School was very angry that they lost from the very beginning. Yi He turned to his opponent and asked how Luo Shi could compare to him. The guy smiled and noted that he was the president of the martial arts club in the graduating class of a private school. If we talk about combat power, then his two teammates together still could not defeat him. His view changed very abruptly, and he honestly admitted that in his opinion, the only real threat in the exams this year was Yi He himself. Since childhood, Shen Guan had an unusually keen sense of smell, and he assured that he could accurately tell that Yi He was like a dormant volcano and that a beast lived inside him. After these words, he smiled and noted that it was their turn and time to go. They climbed into the arena and stood opposite each other and began to wait for the round to start. Both guys knew that this fight would be very interesting and were eagerly awaiting the whistle, smiling at each other. The competition for the top 8 in the An Chen College entrance exam was in full swing. Yi He fought against Shen Guan. It was a fierce battle. Both sides were equally strong. The crowd was in complete shock at what they had to see with their own eyes. It was as if a storm was raging in the arena. When Shen Guang's nose started bleeding, Yi He laughed at him and joked that this was his family's ability. It was truly mysterious to be able to directly destroy cells. Shen Guan used his martial energy to create a barrier on the surface of his body to protect against nuclear radiation. Yi He noted that this was an amazing martial art. This guy in front of him was a real monster that was not worth messing around with. Shen Guan decided that in this case he would show him the martial arts passed down from generation to generation in his family. His beast was a huge snake which he released on his opponent. Behind him, he gathered all his energy and rushed at him with huge fists. And he didn't expect this at all, and everything seemed too fast to him. The commentator noted that there was incredible power in the arena. Yi He, who was previously known as Wang Kickman, was hit by an opponent for the first time, and such a powerful blow made Yi He cough up blood. His breath caught. It was immediately obvious how strong Shen Guan's fist was. But nevertheless, Yi He was able to withstand this blow and did not fall to the ground. He was still standing on his feet and preparing to attack. Shen Guan warned Yi He that he could not escape and that he would not be able to stand against him. Yi He's opponent was really very strong. He was a worthy opponent, a fight with whom meant a lot. Shen Guang's attack was not just physical. He integrated the fighting energy into his body, causing double damage. All of Yi Hui's opponents before him were underachievers and had no experience fighting against a strong opponent. This might have relaxed Yi He a little and thrown her into confusion for a short time. Shen Guan grabbed Yi He and pointed out that he was half right. He emphasized that he could not only pour martial energy into his body, but also block the enemy, making him unable to use martial arts. Shen Guan, having exhausted his opponent, threw him to the other end of the arena, but it was just a game. He immediately began to get closer to him again with both an attack and new forces. Yi He was also unable to dodge the next blow and received even more damage. It was a very bloody massacre. At some point, the audience might have thought that their recent favorite would suffer a defeat. Shen Guan could not allow his opponent to win, and I did not say this directly. The final blow followed, accompanied by an explosion, and Hai was nowhere to be seen. Shen Guan stood to the side, did not fold his arms, and laughed slightly, noting how great it was. His series of techniques left Yi He no chance to parry, according to the judge. The medical staff outside were about to go in. The combination of attacks that Shen Guan had just used would have killed even an ordinary martial artist. The judge delayed a little longer, giving Yi He a chance to get up and continue the fight, but without waiting, he decided to announce the winner. But he didn't have time to do it. And he had his own built-in talent to appear at the very last moment. Shen Guan saw and felt the huge aura that burst out from the dust clouds after the explosion. He was very surprised by what his body felt. A huge dragon paw appeared from the aura. Yi He's voice was heard, noting that Shen Guan was indeed very strong. He told his opponent that if he consoled him, he would be the first to see him in such a form. And he showed himself completely. If high school students could go and demonstrate the incarnation of a magical beast, then they could probably enter Huadu University without taking entrance exams, the judge said. He commented that it was the incarnation of a magical beast, and no one expected that in this small place of Anchen, in addition to Liu Qingchu, a martial arts genius, there were also bloodline geniuses. When Shen Guan saw Yi Hui, he expressed his admiration that his lineage's awakening was at such an extraordinary level. Each examiner was equipped with headphones to monitor candidates and a range of factors inside and outside the examination room. When the examiner saw that the nuclear radiation value was almost 1 billion units, he couldn't even comment on it. He simply didn't understand what was happening. The judge said that after seeing how he had incarnated into a magical beast, the examiners seemed to have discovered a problem. They had enveloped the arena in combat energy and prevented the leakage of nuclear radiation. The audience was actively discussing what was happening in the arena. Yi He had become their favorite again. And they were discussing this rare and previously unknown pedigree and were glad that they finally saw it with their own eyes. Apparently, there were no creatures like the Demur on the Blue Star, and it was not surprising that no one knew about it. Shen Guan found that his nose was bleeding again and guessed that his martial arts shield could no longer block the energy. He said that he could not drag out the fight with him any longer. He had to be reborn again. The judge noted that this was another third-order royal lineage and that this year's college entrance exams were indeed full of worthy candidates. Now, it was even more interesting to watch this fight. It was still not clear who could win. In addition to the pedigree, the martial arts of the candidates were also impressive. Their energy was incredibly strong. It was even scary to imagine what could happen under the pressure of such force. Shen Guan screamed. His hand was completely bloody, and if he hadn't released his strength in time, his entire hand would have been crushed. He thought to himself that he had made so much noise and now he was actually receiving it. Yi He did not retreat. He turned to his opponent and noted that he was magnificent. But unfortunately, this could not change the situation. In the second battle of the top 8 of the offensive exams, a third-level royal bloodline was revealed. On the other hand, an unknown powerful bloodline of a magical beast that is very rare to meet. After awakening Yi Hui's bloodline, his strength became simply unfathomable. Shen Guan was no longer able to suppress his fighting energy. He could only retreat to succeed. But Yi He didn't want to let her opponent go just like that and didn't give him a moment to rest and think of a plan. This fight lasted for a very long time, and even though Shen Guan could no longer withstand such force, he still managed to dodge and stand on his feet. Yi He was already completely restrained by his strength and continued to strike one after another. He tried with all his might to reach his opponent. I understand that Shen Guan is leaving him. He reached out from him with his dragon paw, trying to grab him and hold him. Grabbing it, he found that he couldn't move it from its place. As expected, but his goal was to move behind his back. Yi He stretched and jumped up, resting his paw on Shen Guang's hand. Everything happened so quickly that it was difficult to follow the movements of the candidates as a whole. However, Shen Guangyu managed to escape from Yi He's grasp and once again dodge another blow that could have resulted in his defeat. He jumped to the side, exhaling slightly with joy that he had prolonged this fight for a little while longer. Yi He was not in the mood, but he was not happy yet. He continued to try to catch Shen Guan. After the showdown, he emphasized that it was his turn again, and with ease freed himself from the ground into which he had sunk after his previous jump. It seemed like he had been waiting for this moment. His strength showed itself from a new side. He gathered all his energy and directed it at Shen Guan. Just before the blow, Shen Guan didn't even try to dodge, but simply knelt down in front of Yi He and looked down at the floor. He turned to Yi He, calling him elder brother, and declared that he surrendered, after which he bowed completely to the floor. This action made Yi He very upset. He was indignant that he had prepared for his blow, and he just gave in. He emphasized that he had been so excited, but now he felt awkward, and he exhaled and relaxed, beginning to return to her previous form. He noted that holding back energy felt very strange and was not easy for him. However, according to the rules, if one side surrendered, the other had no right to attack, and he had to retreat and return to his previous form completely. The competition was over, and Yi-hee was the winner again. The crowd screamed again, rejoicing and praising the winner. Shen Guan was confident of his victory before the fight, but after the fight, he did not give Mr. Yi-hee the opportunity to use all his strength. Many spectators laughed at this. Yi-hee fan groups were immediately organized, and everyone was encouraged to join. The groups filled up very quickly. The group suggested following the news to see the full video of Yi-hee's entrance exams. He was named the best candidate in the entrance exams this year. He had already become very popular, and many were his fans and were rooting for his subsequent victories. The principal of the private school was very angry. He thought that Luo Shi might have lost, but he placed all his hopes on Shen Guang, who also lost. He shouted at the young man, indignant at how he could admit defeat, and asked if he knew how much money had been spent on his education. The principal called him an ungrateful bastard, warning him not to think about going to college until he had paid off his debt. Well, the director didn't understand who he was dealing with. Shen Guan calmly and silently approached the director and put his hand on his shoulder. He immediately tensed up and asked in a trembling voice what the guy was up to. Shen Guan replied that he could not bear the final blow and admitted his defeat so as not to hurt himself. He asked if he had not admitted defeat, the director could have taken the blow for him. He said that he would gradually repay the kindness that the school had shown gradually in the future. But they had no right to threaten him. Superiority in strength. The director was almost crying from fear and agreed with everything. After a fierce battle, the top 4 in the college entrance exams were determined. And Chen First Middle School led the way, taking 3 of the top 4 spots. The presenter noted that the old man Liu had worked at the school for so many years that it was time for him to be promoted. The teacher was delighted and happy for his student's success. Yi-hee went to the vase again and took out a ball. There was the basis of the first group. Liu Qingchu was nearby. I noted that she also had the first group. The first match of the entrance exam semifinals was an internal battle for the title of the best of Anchengnom 1 Middle School. Now Yi-hee was up against Liu Qingchu. The most anticipated competition began with the start of the exam. Many spectators hoped for Yi-hee to win. Goddess Liu had a better chance of winning. At this point, it was known that she had mastered 2 mysterious royal martial arts. Thanks to them, she crushed the owner of the 3rd-level royal bloodline. Her bloodline was still unheard of. Shen Guan had the bloodline of a 3rd-level king, and Yi-hee was forced to awaken his bloodline again thanks to him, although Yi-hee's bloodline was quite high. It was assumed that he also had a 4th-level bloodline, but he could not compare to a goddess, or who also had a 4th-level bloodline and excellent martial arts skills. Therefore, a real show was being prepared in the semi-final arena. The judge introduced the candidates. Yi Shi and Liu Qingchu stood opposite each other, as was proper. The referee waved his hand, announcing the start of the fight, and he no longer waited for another moment and immediately began to take on the appearance corresponding to his lineage. Liu Qingchu followed suit and waved her hand at her colleague before disappearing into the thick clouds of dust and smoke. They were both ready for the final battle, which would change a lot in their lives. The girl turned to Yi-hee without a smile and said that she hoped he was strong enough. Yi-hee and Liu Qingchu began their fight. Suddenly, Yi-hee released a huge cloud of steam that quickly engulfed the entire arena, making visibility almost zero even for the spectators in the stands. The host asked an intriguing question about how Liu Qingchu would deal with Yi-hee. He suggested that Yi-hee had reawakened his bloodline power, which added to the suspense in anticipation of what would happen next. In martial arts, Liu Qingchu was far superior to Yi-hee. Her magical skills were so strong that no matter how strong the opponent was, his blows could not harm her. This martial arts genius had a very high combat intelligence. Yi Shi understood that the longer the fight lasted, the less advantageous it became for him, and he needed to change his strategy. He decided to act as aggressively as possible right away and rushed at Liu Qingchu in order to break through her defense and quickly achieve victory without giving her time to prepare. The girl was surprised by Yi-hee's sudden attack. She decided to use her martial arts to defend herself and counterattack at the same time, relying on her strength. Yi Shi saw only the goal of winning as soon as possible. His plan was to not give Liu Qingchu time to maneuver and to suppress her with pressure. When Liu Qingchu attacked, she was mentally outraged at how the youth managed to deceive her, bypass her defense and attack, which greatly upset her and made her think. She was unhappy that Yi He shouted about using his fist, but ended up using a steel whip, which was an unexpected and devious move that disrupted her plans. Having awakened all his power, Yi He was ready to literally swallow his opponent, showing incredible determination that frightened even the most experienced spectators. Viewers noted that Yi He was clearly cheating and cunning, using unexpected methods. However, only Liu Qingchu's fans expressed such an opinion, trying to protect their favorite. The rhythm of the battle that the goddess Liu had set was disrupted by this clever trick of Yi He, which allowed him to gain an advantage and change the course of the battle in his favor. Thanks to this, Yi He was able to deal damage directly to Liu Qingchu, which was the first serious gap in her defense and caused excitement among the spectators. The pursuit of Yi He was so fierce that in the comments under the broadcast of the fight, viewers noted that Liu Qingchu had almost no chance of salvation or escape. Yi He didn't retreat for a second, striking one after another, not giving the girl the slightest opportunity to dodge or escape from his attacks. Liu Qingchu used her fighting energy to push Yi Hui away, and now she had the opportunity to break free from his grip and try to change the situation in the arena. But Yi He wasn't going to let her go that easily. He hissed right into her eyes, stretching out his dragon paws, demonstrating all his danger, that she wouldn't escape from him. The girl could only narrowly avoid Yi He's attacks, using all her agility and combat experience to avoid falling into his deadly grip. Yi He felt Liu Qingchu's confusion, and it gave him incredible pleasure. He enjoyed the pressure he was putting on his opponent. At one point, the girl was truly scared. Yi He's claws were filled with fighting energy. This made his blows especially dangerous. She managed to return to the attack, for which she had to jump high above the shockwave. It was incredible agility and determination not to give up. She knew there was no time to waste. Standing still was dangerous, especially considering that the attack would definitely be followed by another. Yi He followed her every step, calling her classmate Liu and asking her not to run too far, which added to the tension among the audience. He dealt many blows in a row, which the girl could not dodge, which made her situation more and more hopeless. Liu Qingchu didn't understand how Yi He didn't get tired from such intense attacks, while being aware of his enormous physical strength and endurance. She has mastered two secret royal martial arts: the Liu family's defensive secret art, Floating Shadow, and the offensive technique, Hunyuan's Jade Finger. The girl understood that if she could use one of these techniques, she could save herself from Yi He's onslaught and change the course of the battle. However, this was impossible, as Yi He did not give her a single chance to prepare and use his strongest techniques. She understood that she wouldn't be able to hold out like this for long, otherwise she would fall from the arena and lose, which was unacceptable for her. At some point, Liu Qingchu realized that Yi He had almost no choice left, and now she had only one option left to resist him. This made Yi He himself surprised, and even a little confused, because he did not expect such a turn of events. Liu Qingchu had one last trump card left that could change the course of the battle and give her a chance to win. Suddenly, small feathers began to fly around her, growing larger and larger with each passing second, filling the arena. Eventually, the girl gained something resembling wings and rose high into the air, demonstrating the awakening of her bloodline power. The wings quickly took on feathers. They were of extraordinary beauty and grew straight from Liu Qingchu's back, striking everyone with their elegance and power. It was the awakening of a lineage of a magical beast, an extraterrestrial bird, which the girl first showed in the arena. Liu Qingchu shouted at Yi He, asking him to be careful, as she couldn't fully control her strength in this form. Yi He smiled widely, thanked him for the warning, and noted that he had only used 50% of his strength so far, and was now ready to give it his all. He shouted that all danger for the girl was over, although he himself already felt the influence of her power on himself. Liu Qingchu flew straight towards him, full of confidence that she now had equal strength with her opponent. This made Yi He very happy. He was looking forward to how their battle would develop further, enjoying every moment. Their energies collided with incredible power, but neither of them was able to immediately achieve the desired result from their attack. This powerful blow blinded even the spectators in the stands. It was impossible to open their eyes because of the brightness and force of the collision. Liu Qingchu and Yi He were thrown back an equal distance from each other, both feeling the enemy's power. The girl, blinded by her own strength, opened her eyes as quickly as possible and found Yi He in the arena, hoping that she could stop him. But what she saw horrified her. A real monster stood before her. Yi He's energy had increased even more, and now he was too difficult an opponent despite her awakened bloodline power. The first semi-final of the college entrance exam was still going on. The fight between Yi He and Liu Qingchu was a test for both of them. Liu Qingchu felt some energy fluctuations and immediately realized that this was a very bad sign. Even the judge noticed that Yi He's magical beast form was gaining strength. It was actually very hard not to notice. Even his appearance said so. The judge noted that the protruding spine on Yi He's back was storing up enormous energy. She gradually entered his mouth. One could only guess what the next blow might be. In one of the next moments, it was as if some kind of energy explosion occurred in the arena, the epicenter of which was Yi He himself. Liu Qingchu was even worthy of pity, considering the situation and the opponent she was up against. The girl managed to protect herself with a shield from this deafening and blinding energy wave emanating from her opponent. Seeing everything that was happening, the girl realized that she had to gather all her strength, otherwise she definitely had no chance of winning. Another burst of energy followed. The delicate feathers from Liu Qingchu's wings began to swirl in the air once again. It felt like the girl was simply torn apart by such a powerful energy wave from Yi He. But soon, her silhouette began to be traced, which confirmed that the girl was still standing on her feet. The judge noted that Yi He's breath was reflected by the feathers on Liu Qingchu's body. The spectators who watched the fight were in shock. What they saw happened very rarely. Such fights were unique. The protective barrier that was put in the arena was very useful. If it weren't for it, the spectators would have been in danger. The rebounding energy particles crashed into this protective barrier. It was very similar to fireworks, which signified Yi He's victory. At times it seemed that the protective barrier would not withstand such powerful energy and would simply break. The mayor of An City, Chen Huangqing, watched this battle very closely. He asked to watch what was happening closely, since in his opinion, the strongest champion in the history of their city was supposed to appear that day. The judge noted that fortunately for all the spectators, their mayor protected everyone from what was happening in the arena. A small pool of blood formed on the arena floor and continued to fill. Liu Qingchu was a terrible sight. Her wings were broken and her clothes were torn. The girl was standing on her feet with her last strength. She couldn't believe that Hai had actually broken her feathers' defense with one blow. She was already completely doubting that she would ever be able to defeat him. She remembered being told as a child that she was the hope for the rebirth of the Liu family and could not lose. She was warned that all the ancestors of the family were watching her, and she should not let anyone down. Her mother made every effort to educate her so that one day she would regain her mouth and she would not be able to show willfulness. She had to not only hold the victory in this exam, but also continue to win in the future. The girl tried to resist this, but she was still very weak. She felt very small and defenseless. She was very tired and no longer wanted everything that was happening in her life. She understood perfectly well that her classmate was insanely strong. This delighted her, but at the same time it made her understand her true capabilities. Faced with such a strong opponent, she decided that it would be quite acceptable to lose. The girl was ready for this. She mentally addressed her opponent, told him that he should have been able to use her fatigue, and begged him to defeat her. With her last strength, she rushed to attack him. She hoped that she would miss, and victory would finally be his. Her foot hit him right in the chest. Yi He didn't even seem to think about moving to the side, dodging the blow. She was very surprised by this. Well, it was also surprising that her blow did not affect her opponent in any way. He just looked at her sadly and asked where her fighting spirit had gone. Tears began to flow from her eyes. She knew what she was doing, but she couldn't allow herself to admit it to anyone else. Even in front of Yi He, she was completely confused and looked away. And he was unhappy with this and asked if she would at least look him in the eye. He was angry and cursed. He shouted that he was going to win this title fairly and honestly, and did not want to defeat someone who had long ago given up and not compete. But the girl did not move at all. Her body seemed paralyzed. She felt and looked very confused and desperate. He had no choice but to finish the job, but he wanted to cheer the girl up and restore her fighting spirit. He dealt her a very light blow, after which he noted that the girls had better start confronting him seriously, or things would be much worse for her. The audience also started shouting for her to become more serious. Liu Qingchu bent over on the floor and covered her face with her hands, telling Yi He that he was a terrible person and that no one had dared to beat her like that since childhood. She screamed that she clearly wanted to give the victory to him, but she did not understand why he continued to fight with her. This was the last straw for her. She was reborn screaming that you can't hit a girl in the face. This gave her a lot of strength, and he smiled and noted that it was much better this way, and emphasized that if the girl didn't want to be hit in the face, then she should have fought. Liu Qingchu gained new wings. They were hundreds of times bigger and more beautiful than before. She no longer looked desperate. She gained the true form of a magical beast. She turned to her classmate and said that she would defeat him in her strongest form as he wished. Yi He didn't even slightly expect such a turn of events. He looked at his rival with both admiration and some confusion, but he was glad that she had finally revealed the true form of her magical beast, and now things were taking an interesting turn. He shouted that in that case he could not underestimate her. It was a physical skill and qi that combined the demure form and enhanced qigong, and it was called Nuclear Light Combat Body. He rushed into the attack, proposing to have a real battle. I had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. He wanted with all his guts to show his maximum strength against a worthy opponent. Liu Qingchu didn't answer him, but only smiled in response. She was ready. The arena was once again raging with an energy hurricane. The opponent's powers had increased many times over. They were truly dangerous. It was amazing to watch such a fight. The girl was like a tornado. She dodged her opponent's attacks, but even her defense was deadly. And he, on the contrary, liked it very much. He had a huge motivation to prove even to himself the greatness of his power. Liu Qingchu stopped to the side and took a deep breath, after which she threw out all the air with a scream. It was a powerful energy wave that was directed at Yi He managed to put up a protective barrier in front of himself, but the energy still passed through it, although not in full. It was indeed a very powerful blow from Liu Qingchu. At that time, even he doubted that he could withstand such a blow and not receive damage. He noted out loud that the girl had used a similar trick, and this time he would not be able to retreat. Spikes erupted from his vertebrae. They were filled with energy that was just asking to get out. Liu Qingchu gave up her defense and revealed the strongest techniques of the Liu family. She promised her opponent that she would meet him face to face. She used an atomic breath beam. Literally, this magical energy burst out of her, which was even difficult to control. This magical beam was aimed straight at Yi He. Liu Qingchu summoned the abilities of her bloodline. This beam was followed by several more blows. Liu Qingchu's atomic breath and he and earth blood thorns formed two powerful strikes. The judge, watching what was happening with delight, noted that such a clash of forces was beyond the strength of these two fighters. The mayor of the city used genetic technology. He had to intervene. Maru had to strengthen the protective barrier that was placed on the arena many times over. But it turned out that even this reinforced barrier was not enough to contain the powerful energy that was bursting out of the arena. It was a really powerful blow. The spectators were amazed by such power, and also by the fact that the mayor was able to put up such a wall. Maria of the city contained the consequences of the impact, protecting both the inhabitants of her city and this testing hall, which otherwise could have been scattered into stones. He set up the triple-lane wall too hastily, and it was not as strong as usual. As a result of the attack, both she and Liu Qingchu collided with each other. No one would have thought that there would be two incredibly strong candidates this year. Liu Qingchu was wounded again, hot blood flowing from her hand and falling to the ground. The power of her true magical beast body was exhausted. The girl could barely stand on her feet. She barely survived this collision. But she couldn't give up and felt that she could still fight. But the girl couldn't even look up. Right in front of her, she saw her opponent's legs. He was very close. He stepped out in front of her from the cloud of dust that had arisen from the clash of their forces. The girl, seeing him, couldn't even get up to defend herself. The girl noted that her blows clearly hit her opponent, but he remained unharmed, which was incredibly clever. He looked at her and said that if she did not get rid of the radiation in her body, she would become a cripple in the future. The girl trembled. She pursed her lips and tried not to cry right there in the arena in front of 1,000 spectators, but she couldn't hold back her tears. She screamed that she didn't even want to fight him, and said that she didn't understand why he was so persistent in forcing her to fight. Yi carefully sat down next to the girl and leaned closer to her. The whole storm seemed to disappear somewhere at once. He wondered if she really didn't want to fight him, or if she was just rebelling and not wanting to admit her competitive spirit. He noted that when she fought, her desire to win was palpable. The girl did not expect to hear this and was confused for a second. She knew he was right. She really thought about how to win, so she gave up on defense and used all her strength. But she didn't understand what was wrong with her because she hated fighting and wanted to lose to him as soon as possible. But during the fight, she really felt that feeling. She felt the delight of going away not for someone else, but only for herself. Yi slowly reached out to the girl and took her shoulder with special care, which made her feel embarrassed. He said that the girl had too many distracting thoughts. She felt how strong he was, but this power was now strangely gentle and did not want to harm her. Through this touch, he took all the radiation from her and then said that it was precisely because of the large number of distracting thoughts that the girl lost. As he left her, he said that she was still the strongest opponent he had ever met. He came back and, smiling at her, said that the next time the opportunity presented itself, he would very much like to have the most honest fight with her. The girl was very touched by these words. But she did not get up and remained sitting in the same place watching him emerge from the cloud. The judge noted that the smoke had cleared, and he, who was still standing on the field, finally appeared in the arena. The first match of the semifinals was over, and he from the first middle school of Incheon won. In the second duel, as expected, Chuzhou won. It was the climax of the Oncheong City College entrance exam. It was a battle for the title of the best. Before Aihe, the final battle lay ahead. His opponent was supposed to be Chuzhou, who was also from the city's first middle school. The finals of the entrance exams finally began. Chuzhou asked his opponent to get ready. Yi bared his teeth and suggested that Chuzhou attack with all his might. Chuzhou charged forward. This battle was going to be even more intense than the fight with Liu Qingchu. Chuzhou was confident and knew from the very beginning who his opponent would be. But Yi was also confident in his own strength. This test only gave him pleasure. He was eager to show off his full strength. He wasn't going to hold back all his power in this fight. He was going to give it his all. He awaited his opponent's attack with great interest, and when it came, he was very happy to repel it. Chuzhou was surprised that his opponent was too lazy to look for his real body, so he used simple rough techniques to attack all the clones. Even with his defensive ability, he couldn't fight Yi head-on. He couldn't imagine that there was even one person of his age who could be infected with Yi in hand-to-hand combat. He decided that if he couldn't fight him in close combat, he would wear him down from a distance. Yi was prepared for any turn of events in this arena. He knew that he would use all his power, and therefore he was not afraid of anything and was confident in his victory. Any difficulty that could arise along the way gave him pleasure, which made him truly invincible. Chuzhou used the bloodline ability Ice Pulse. With such abilities, he was simply the reincarnation of an ice dragon. Thanks to this ability, he managed to encase his opponent in ice and thus render him harmless for a moment. The power of Chuzhou's ice impulse was so great that an iceberg formed on the field, and Yi was frozen in it. The sudden flash of such a powerful ice force caused considerable damage to He's body. Well, that wasn't a big problem for him. The judge soon noticed that the iceberg was starting to melt. A huge energy blast burst out from the iceberg, breaking apart the ice block and heading towards Chuzhou. Chuzhou was shocked and couldn't believe his eyes that his opponent had escaped from this trap so easily. Few could resist his trap, and usually it gave him a huge advantage in combat. But not this time. For Yi it was something very simple, and it didn't take any effort to escape from this trap. Coming out of the ice cloud, he shouted to Chuzhou that his ice dragon power had no effect on him. He openly suggested that he might be superior in strength. Chuzhou himself understood that the gap was too great, but he had to continue the battle. He turned to his opponent and asked him to take his final blow, explaining that this move was the limit of his martial arts and he had originally intended to save it for Liu Qingchu. Everything around sparkled. The sunlight reflected off the ice fragments. It was an incredibly powerful ice strike. Huge ice pillars formed in the arena and rushed into the sky. The mayor of the city was surprised when he watched him. It was amazing that at such a young age this fighter already had such strength. But even this did not stop Yi He. A mad smile was visible on his face as he rushed forward. There was blood in the arena again. It was Hai who was wounded. Well, it was just a small scratch on his hand. And he told Chu Zhou that when he got a better sword in the future, he would have a chance. Chu Zhou was completely at a loss, as he couldn't even imagine for a second that his most powerful ability would only cause a scratch to the enemy. His sword was broken into small pieces, even though it had cost so much effort. But he did not give up and asked his opponent what kind of chance he would be given. Yi He laughed and replied that it might have been little more than a chance to become a successful simpleton. Chu Zhou raised his hand and loudly declared that he surrendered. He decided to accept defeat because he knew that he really would not have the opportunity to win this fight. So the winner of the final entrance exams was again Yi Hai. The crowd erupted in delight again. Many were rooting for him and were happy to see him win again. It was called a dark horse and noted that it really turned out to be a mystery until the very end. Someone wrote that they heard that last year he was at the very bottom of the class, but this year he beat the best student and became the best attacker, which was very inspiring. Now it was believed that no one would be able to surpass he in the future. Everyone admired him and considered him the strongest, which he actually proved. The judge addressed the spectators watching the latest entrance exam at the city college at the stadium and via live broadcast, and noted that after 3 o'clock days of bloody battles, a winner had finally been determined. He hugged the guy and asked him what his strength was, because he had made up for lost time and built up strength over time. And now that he had taken first place, he had something to say. And he, first of all, thanked his teacher, because it was he who did not abandon him in trouble and encouraged him when he was at the very bottom, which gave him fighting spirit. Hearing this from his TV screen, the teacher jumped for joy. I thought that I did not deserve his praise because of the poor performance of my duties as a teacher, and he wanted to continue, but suddenly noticed the director, who was waving both hands at him. The principal was happy. He was glad that he had promoted his high school and was willing to reward him with a 2 million scholarship for that. Yi He was very happy to know about this and thanked his school and the director, noting that without his wise leadership, he would not be here. Finally, he expressed gratitude to himself and noted that without his personal hard work and wisdom, he would definitely not be as successful as he is now. Yi He received the title of top student, which came with a random ability reward. The stadium corridor was very empty and quiet, but outside, it was chaos. A bunch of journalists and just regular fans gathered around Yi He and pressed him with various questions. But he could no longer answer them, and he just tried to run away as quickly as possible and hide from everyone. He was asked even the strangest questions, even about the beauty of his rivals. He couldn't even imagine how to react to this and what to answer. He shouted that he didn't have time for all this and ran towards the stadium building. He tried to ignore all the questions and ran as quickly as possible into the building. He managed to hide from everyone on the stadium's basketball court, where, fortunately, there really was no one there. He breathed a sigh of relief, happy that he was finally free of reporters. He was not limited to one template and could gain new opportunities through the reward system, which was a big surprise to him. His thoughts were interrupted by a voice behind him, which made him jump up in fright, thinking that it was the reporters again. A man with glasses stood in front of him. He took off his hat and congratulated him on his victory, explaining that he was not a journalist, but was from Huadu. He suggested that they discuss the issue of genetic blocking. This seemed very strange to Yi He. He had not expected such a question at all, especially in this context. He didn't open any genetic locks, and all his abilities were obtained through the monster's blood. And he assumed that this guy knew about his abilities but couldn't figure out who he was. The man asked if Yi He had heard about the mini genetic blocking hotel from his father. Yi He confirmed this, because he did remember something like that. The man began to take some envelope out of his bag and was interested in whether or not he was interested in how his father, an ordinary taxi driver, knew about such a term that was completely inappropriate for his profession. And he became tense, assuming that this could be some very important secret. The man handed him an envelope and explained that because of his special position, Huadu could reveal a secret document to him. Yi He immediately opened it and took out the papers stored inside. It was Prometheus, a research institute that was once a giant in the field of genetic research on the Blue Star and was declared wanted and banned by several countries due to one incident. Therefore, many of its key scientists were forced to hide their identities and go into hiding. The technology of genetic blocking their data was one of Prometheus's key projects. This meant that Father He was a research fellow, and he was the result of his research. The man asked He not to worry and warned that they would not make his life difficult. And he himself came here to report this because, after all, he was a participant in the project and had the right to know. They explained to him that since he was a key prospect in the country's education, they would always take care of his safety. Yi-hee laughed, noting that it was annoying when a person became famous and attracted more attention to himself and brought a lot of problems upon himself. He noted that this society really adapted quickly, and the man announced that he was leaving after completing his task. Yi-hee was glad that he was finally alone. He thought with delight that at the entrance exams he would not only get a ticket to the university, but also from the director, he would receive a scholarship of 2 million and an additional bonus of 800,000. The most important thing was that he could now finally choose his new ability. He couldn't wait any longer and decided to get started right away. We smoked right above it, and a kind of energy funnel began to form right on the ceiling. He watched all this with caution and at the same time with curiosity. This went on for a not very long time, and he waited patiently because he knew what would follow. Soon, the image of a huge monster appeared right in front of him. It looked much more powerful than his dragon. It was a supergiant humanoid with 1% compatibility, and he discovered that it was possible to combine abilities, and if you superimpose the gene of a supergiant humanoid on Gen, something amazing should result. He did not waste time and immediately began to combine this and began to wait for the result. Well, what he knew for sure was that he would become a real king of monsters. The man spoke to Huolong on the phone and asked to clarify whether he had personal matters that he did not intend to carry out. Here he confirmed this and asked to cancel everything. On the table in front of him was a small crater that looked like a button. He pressed his finger on it, scanning his fingerprint. This man looked quite serious, focused, and desperate. The man, dressed completely in a protective suit, stated that unfortunately they did not find his brother's body in the secret kingdom, but found traces in the place where his signal last appeared. After checking, it turned out that there was a small amount of nuclear radiation. The man was grieving. He turned to his brother. I remind you that he told him not to get involved in the affairs of society. He swore that his brother did not listen to him and blamed himself because his mother told him to take care of him. Thinking about this, he watched the broadcast of the fight, and learned that he had become the winner of the finals of the entrance exams. Seeing him, he assumed that such a rare goddess of the city would be fought for by Huadu University, and sympathized that they would not be able to see his enrollment. And he suddenly received some strange package. He was about to travel to a secret dimension to test the new gene, but a package from an unknown sender intrigued him. It was a letter. It said that, in agreement with the investigation of the Huadu Central Research Department, a new secret dimension, presumably of rank C, would be opened in the Redwood Mountain. The sender proposed to join forces to investigate it, and he was a little confused by the fact that the sender lived in an unknown century, since he was still writing letters, and decided that he was some kind of time traveler. But nevertheless, this proposal seemed very good to him, and he went to the Red Tree Mountain near his city. There were a lot of people around him. There were at least 1,000 of them. As expected, the new secret dimension was very popular. In the queue in this secret dimension, Yi-hee met Chu-jo. He immediately noticed that Yi-hee had become stronger. Yi-hee did not expect that Chu-jo had such a keen sense of smell. With the money he got from the entrance exam, he bought several gene preparations and increased the compatibility of the supergiant humanoid gene by 35%. He believed that this would bring results. Yi-hee asked Chu-jo which university he was going to attend. He replied that he was going to enroll in Huadu and Yi. He thought that they could become classmates. He noted to himself that Chu-jo's mood had suddenly deteriorated. I didn't want to think about it anymore because the secret dimension began to open. Ahead of Yi-hee was another test where he could properly test his new abilities. As soon as the secret dimension opened, a huge monster immediately burst out from there. Someone shouted that everyone should unite and destroy this monster and fight their way inside. Everyone immediately rushed at this monster. Each had their own goal. When the dragon saw what a crowd was running at him, he got scared and wanted to retreat. But he couldn't do it, as he got stuck. This played a bad joke on him and he was defeated. The path to a new secret dimension was open, and now it was everyone for themselves. The entire crowd slowly moved towards the entrance of the dimension. Yi-hee was one of them. As he got closer to the dimension, he smelled a strong smell of blood. It was an ambush of monsters, and it looked like they had been waiting there for a long time. All wars, according to national laws, had to give priority to killing monsters and resisting the onslaught of monsters. All the warriors who came to the dimension rushed into the attack without thinking. Because their powers were increased hundreds of times, this monster ambush seemed so terrifying to me. Chuzhou used his bloodline ability to enhance the battle efficiency and hasten the victory. He struck most of the monsters with his ice strike, encasing them all in ice. This gave me the opportunity to switch to others and make this battle easier. But suddenly he heard from the side that someone was going to use an explosive fist on me. This blow flew right behind Chuzhou's back. He asked him to be careful when he struck. Chuzhou thanked him for his help. Yi Shi noted that none of the monsters in this dimension were worth their strength. Behind him were dozens, maybe even hundreds of monster corpses. Chuzhou saw this and was shocked that Yi had already managed to kill so many. It seemed that the monsters he killed simply melted. Chuzhou assumed that he must have used powerful nuclear radiation. It was difficult to resist. It was silent. And the most terrible thing is that the radiation directly attacked the cells of living beings. This made Yi the most dangerous monster killer against any opponent. The most amazing thing is that Yi looked absolutely calm and relaxed, as if it did not cost him any effort. Everyone was surprised that the battle behind them had stopped so quickly, and began to look around to see if there was a high-level warrior among them. They soon discovered that among them was the one who had attacked their cities from the entrance exams. Many were amazed at how he managed to kill so many monsters so quickly, while others pointed out the live broadcast of the entrance exams, which made everything clear. People quickly changed tactics. They decided to drive all the monsters to this winner because he dealt with them very quickly. A signal was given from the front. The monsters' advance was defeated and the monsters began to retreat. Chuzhou wiped his forehead and noted that at least they had withstood the first wave of creatures. He also noted that there were originally 1,000 warriors, but now there were only about 800 left, and there were many wounded. Hai appeared in front of him, carrying a huge bag on his shoulders, and asked if there was a way to take all these riches. Chuzhou stood in a stupor, not understanding where he got so many monster cores from. Chuzhou handed Yi his storage ring and said that he could put everything in it. Yi smiled. I don't know that Chuzhou is rich, because the ring was worth tens of millions. At this point, Boss Wu Sen and his friends had returned. At this, someone from the crowd shouted, which attracted the attention of both he and Chuzhou. Luckily, he could kill Lord-level monsters, otherwise sooner or later they would die of exhaustion in the herd of monsters. Wu Sen went to Yi first and greeted him, guessing that he must have won first place in the entrance exam. He introduced himself and explained that he was the leader of the Silver Wolf martial arts group in Inchen City. He noted that he had only learned from the group members about his heroic performance, that I would like to know if he would like to join his group, explaining that it would not affect his college education and would allow him to use various subsidies or benefits. The crowd screamed and shouted that this was a great opportunity, and without the support of the martial arts group, the lone warrior would not be able to maintain his extremely expensive martial arts career. In addition, the Silver Wolf martial arts group was considered one of the largest in the entire Xia kingdom. While Yi was pondering, a girl riding a panther approached them. She smiled, noting that she was surprised why Wu Sen rushed towards these guys. The girl glanced at Yi and also asked him to join her Chengda martial arts group, noting that they were smaller than the Silver Wolf, but she guaranteed that he would be able to manage 15% of the group's training resources every month. The crowd became even more excited as a high school student forced two major martial arts groups to compete with offers to join, and he rolled his eyes and said that unfortunately he had not yet had any thoughts about joining the martial arts group and refused both offers. Wu Chun laughed and was not surprised at all. He suggested that they just become friends, so that in the future, the guy would be able to contact them at any time. The girl replied that her group would also be waiting for his arrival. Chuzhou, after this conversation, noted that after fighting off the monsters, they could begin free exploration. It was a giant skeleton, and he suggested first climbing to the top of the trees to survey the entire area and make a plan. They agreed on this and immediately began to climb as high as possible. A few moments later, they found themselves at the top of one of the tall trees. Chuzhou looked around and focused his gaze on one place. He turned to Yi He and asked if he knew what they had seen. They saw a huge creature that must have been over 1,000 m tall. It was truly amazing. Yi He noted that it wasn't that hard to imagine. They were still young, and in the next few years, they would be able to defeat these monsters and even learn the truth about them. Chuzhou was expecting this answer from Yi He. He himself would be scared when confronted with an unknown powerful creature, but he was sure he would win. He began to doubt his own strength, thinking that he was not so good not only in martial arts, but also in willpower. And Hai had already given himself up to dreams that sooner or later the cores of these monsters would become his. The life magnetic field of Yi He could determine the distribution of life in this secret dimension. But in the south and east, there was amber, which was like a vacuum zone, completely empty. Where there was smoke, there was fire, and the stronger the wind and waves, the more valuable the fish were. He decided that they should go there, and he pointed his finger in that direction, noting that there was a herd lake there and suggested going there to have a look around. Having examined the area around them and decided where to go, both he and Chuzhou descended back to the ground. When they came down, Yi He saw Sister Yuli, who was very happy. Chuzhou did not understand who it was and why his comrade was so happy. The girl recognized her best attacker and noted that she did not expect him to be so strong. Her people asked to meet him because the attacker was quite impressive when fighting against a wave of monsters. Yi He moved towards her and asked her how long she had been in this dimension. She replied that she had just arrived and that two of her teammates, good swimmers, had gone down to the lake to scout the way. At that moment, her people returned back. They emerged from the lake with loud cries. One of them shouted that they had hit the jackpot and would definitely get rich. The girl calmly asked for more details, and the guy replied that there was a relic under the lake, and they would be able to make a fortune on it. The girl immediately perked up when she heard this. She already thought that her entire team had become rich. Yi He asked Chuzhou what relics they were talking about. He explained that in the secret dimensions, there were several mysterious buildings that were supposed to have been left behind by ancient civilizations, and experts called them relics. It was said that it was from them that the theoretical foundations of modern human martial arts and many genetic technologies arose. One of Yuli's people, hearing these words, became indignant and immediately became aggressive towards the guys. He was ready to deal with them for listening, but the girl calmed him down and explained that they had won first place in the entrance exams at the city college. She said that their strength was far superior to most warriors, and they were to join their group. Yi He leaned on his comrade's shoulder and turned to the Yuli fighter and asked him to relax, confirming that they would help explore the ruins. Boya immediately began to wonder how they would divide the spoils, to which Hai replied that they would simply help, and the spoils could be distributed according to their efforts, and the greater the contribution, the greater the reward. The fighter agreed and allowed them to join temporarily, but warned that they could no longer hope for the guy. He decided that it was better not to make enemies for himself, and only for this reason agreed to explore the ruins together. The whole team immediately set off. After passing through a cave of extraordinary beauty, they found ruins inside. It was exactly the place they were looking for. When they went inside, and the fighter was surprised that his comrade was nowhere to be found, although he asked to stay where he was. Another of the fighters suggested that he could find the treasure and leave first, and smiled broadly. He tried to contact Li Wei on the radio, but he still didn't respond. Yuli asked the boy if they had checked the cave for monsters when they discovered it. The fighter denied it and explained that they had released all the bait bombs, but not a single monster had shown up. Another of the girls noted that the place turned out to be very dangerous and suggested that since Wei had disappeared, they shouldn't have continued their exploration. But the fighter did not agree with this and shouted that if they did not dare to take the wealth and glory lying before their noses, they would be a low-level warrior for the rest of their lives. He assumed that those who were afraid of dying should leave. Those who wanted to get rich should stay. After waiting a little and making sure that no one was going to leave, he moved forward. They went down a very deep tunnel into the ruins. Suddenly, by the colors of their flashlight, they discovered tracks leading deep into the ruins. He felt something strange and at the same time felt a strong tension. He whispered to Chuzhou that something was wrong. Chuzhou confirmed this and said that the time was wrong, since Huang Yuli said that their team had arrived at the lake only recently, and it was no more than 10 minutes ago. However, Yu Yai and Li Wei found this cave at the bottom of a huge lake, and after going through it, they discovered such a hidden path to the ruins, as if they had a cheat like turning on the map perspective in the game. The guys decided that this was obviously a trick, and it was worth warning Yuli about it and leaving. Yi smiled creepily and asked his comrade not to panic, explaining that he had a trump card. They fell silent and followed Yu Yai further and soon left that narrow tunnel. Didn't come across anything that looked like the core of the monster had lost its shine, and it looked like it had been used up long ago. The fighter noted that it was not surprising that he hadn't managed to meet the crowds of water monsters during the dive, because they had been eaten long ago. Yuli asked her fighter where the relic he was talking about was. Yuli glanced at her friend who was frozen with fear. She pointed her finger somewhere in front of her and couldn't explain what she saw there. Just below the ceiling of the cave, Li Wei, who was dead, was hanging from the tentacles of a plant. Yuli couldn't take her eyes off him, trying to understand what had happened here. The entire group looked at Yuyan and was horrified. He fell to his knees and clutched his head, shouting about the lost relic, not understanding where it could have gone. He was full of horror. He was screaming about his dead comrade. I understand how this happened to him. Well, very quickly his speech became slurred and he began to talk only about some vines. When he raised his head, it became noticeable that it was affected by some kind of tumor. He only had time to shout for everyone to run, before the vines from the ceiling pulled his head apart in front of everyone. The group couldn't believe what was happening, but immediately ran away. It was a big loss for the team. The fighters were very good people and had good strength. During one study of the dimension, they lost 2 people at once, and they died a terrible death. And he ran away and remained to watch what was happening, thinking that no one could have imagined that the monster could be so smart. After attacking 2 fighters, he parasitized the brain of one of them, using it as bait to catch more prey. It was easy to guess that they had been lured into his hunting grounds, but the team never managed to leave this cave because the monster blocked the path they came in. He didn't want them to escape. Chu Zhou claimed to have seen such a monster controlling vines in books. It was a second-tier king-class monster called the Phantom Demonic Vine. Yuli was full of horror and said that the royal class could not be classified as ordinary levels. This was not an enemy that they, first-level warriors, could fight against. He had already summoned his bloodline and noted that he didn't care what level the monster was, and it was enough for them to watch him smash it to pieces. Suddenly, there was a huge explosion. The rocks of the cave flew to the sides in huge boulders. The man who entered the cave turned to Yi and said that he had come to kill him. He was Chi Yi Bloodsmoke. He was a warrior of the 8th level.